start, I would like us to think about the Duke of Edinburgh during the prelude. I won't mention him during the service, but I think we could all benefit by remembering his humility, his service, and his support to the Queen in a consistent way over so many years. Let us remember him. Thank you, Robert. We can continue.
Tony, for some reason, we can't hear you. You don't look like you're on mute, but.
What is this life, if full of care? We have no time to stand and stare, no time to stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as sheep or cows. No time to see when woods we pass, where squirrels hide their nuts in grass. No time to see in broad daylight streams full of stars like skies at night. An appeal by W.H. Davis to avoid our frenetic activity. Let us now light our chalices. We light this candle as a symbol of our faith. By its light, may our vision be illumined. By its warmth, may our fellowship be encouraged. And by its flame, may our yearnings for peace, justice, and the life of the Spirit be enkindled. Perhaps some of us now want to light our own candles of joy and concern. I invite you to unmute and do so if you wish to do that.
I would like to light a candle on behalf of Janet and the whole family on the anniversary of Mavis's death. They are remembering her all weekend with food and celebration, but also in thought. And may we all think of Mavis and her wonderful and beautiful contribution to our chapel.
I've lit my candle for Rev Julian, who is recovering at her daughter's, and for all my friends who are ill at this time. Some are sadly in hospital. And for my neighbour who sadly passed away on Friday afternoon. So remembering her family at this time.
Finally, I want to light an extra candle of joy. It was 57 years ago that I was making my way to Pentney Chapel to get married. Can we now sing Spirit of Life?
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Our first hymn is number 177 in the Green Book, Hymns for Living. It actually emphasizes the importance of community, which as we've been in lockdown, we have missed so very much. We can become, hymn 177.
supporting friends, hands joined in unity. Rejoice, my friend, in fellowship, in living full and free. Let us live with humankind as sisters, brothers true. We'll share our joys and sorrows share, becoming as we do. We can grow, we can become our finer self set free. Risk what we are, sure in our faith, in what we yet can be.
By missing it, we have learned the importance of community. A prayer. Great Spirit God, help us to learn from our misfortunes, to listen to you and to those around us, to learn that we will learn more from difficulties than successes, to learn what is truly valuable and what is not. Let us now say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be your name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. My story concerns my family, and it is actually about my great-great-great-grandmother, nearly 200 years ago. I realized that during the COVID now, I would have hesitated to help my neighbor if they had caught COVID. But in the great cholera epidemic in 1831, we know in our family that my great-great-great-grandmother, my grandmother's grandmother, was the one person trained to help cholera patients, and she administered to patients in neighboring villages. Only 3 people died in her villages, whereas in other villages, the population was almost wiped out. Let her be a lesson to me and to us all. I thought it might also be useful for us to remind ourselves that pandemics are nothing new. So from Exodus 9, we have the story of 2 of the plagues. Go back to Pharaoh, the Lord commanded Moses. Tell him, this is what the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, says. Let my people go, so they can worship me. If you continue to hold them and refuse to let them go, The hand of the Lord will strike all your livestock, your horses, donkeys, camels, cattle, sheep, and goats, with a deadly plague. But the Lord will again make a distinction between the livestock of the Israelites and that of the Egyptians. Not a single one of Israel's animals will die. And the Lord did just as he had said. The next morning, all the livestock of the Egyptians died, but the Israelites did not lose a single animal. Even so, Pharaoh's heart remained stubborn, and he still refused to let the people go. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Take handfuls of soot from a brick kiln and have Moses toss it into the air while the Pharaoh watches. The ashes will spread like fine dust over the whole land of Egypt, causing festering boils to break out on the people and animals throughout the land." So they took soot from a brick kiln and went and stood before Pharaoh. As Pharaoh watched, Moses threw the soot in the air, and boils broke out on people and animals alike. Even the magicians were unable to stand before Moses, because the boils had broken out on them and all the Egyptians. But the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, and just as the Lord had predicted to Moses, Pharaoh refused to let them leave. I also just wanted to remind us a little bit of something that I think has come home deeply to me, and that's how I would be careful about risking myself by helping people who have a contagious disease. I'm really quite ashamed of that. And it reminded me of the two Lutheran pastors, Martin Niemöller and Dietrich Bonhoeffer, on risking yourself for others. Faced with Nazi atrocities, Bonhoeffer said, "Silence in the face of evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act." Niemöller, who was in Sachsenhausen from 1938 to 1945 and survived, whereas Bonhoeffer didn't, was probably in Sachsenhausen at the same time as my distant cousin, who was killed by the Nazis. His quote says, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." Our second hymn is 183, "With Your Neighbour's Share." It's a tune that we don't normally sing, but I think the words are very relevant today.
When your heart with joy o'erflowing sings a thankful prayer, in your joy, oh, let a neighbor with you share. When the harvest sheaves thin gathered fill your barns with store, To your God and to your neighbor give the more. If your soul with power uplifted yearn for glorious deed, give your strength to serve your neighbor's every need. Have you borne a secret sorrow in your lonely breast? Take your sorrowing neighbor for a guest. Share in full your bread of blessing, sorrow's burden share. When your heart unfolds a neighbor, God is there.
Give your strength to serve your neighbor's every need. I like the words very much. Now we have a time for prayer, which is followed by a period of silence for our own silent prayers, and then by a musical meditation. In this time of prayer, when we seem to be coming through the pandemic, I want us to give thanks for our current hopes, but also thanks to all those who have helped us get to this position, especially doctors and nurses and care home staff, and also teachers and home schoolers. Let us at this time remember also the difficulties other countries still face and pray that we will be generous in our support for them. Let us remember that we are one humanity, and our attitude to others will reflect in their attitude to us. Let us remember particularly those whose mental health has been damaged by the isolation and difficulties, and look to what we can do to help them. We have survived so far, so let us realize that we will need to look to not only pay for the support we have had, but pay to reduce extremes of education and poverty that caused high death rates and avoid this in future. Help us to distinguish what is important in the future and what is not so important to achieve a better world. Thank you, Barry, and thank you, Robert, for presenting the service. I'm sorry to have worked you hard, Barry, with 4 hymns, but they're mostly short ones, I think. Our third hymn is number 192, A New Community. I find most of the words absolutely terrific here. We would be one in building for tomorrow. We would be one in living for each other. So basically, as we join in singing, let's sing hymn 192.
As now we join in singing a hymn of love to pledge ourselves anew to that high cause of greater understanding of who we are and what is us true. We would be one in building for tomorrow a greater world than they have known today. We would be one in searching for that meaning which binds our hearts and joins us on our way. We would be one in living for each other, with love and justice strive to make all free. As one we pledge ourselves to greater service, to show the world a new community.
You're muted, Tony.
One of the great pleasures of preparing a service is that it causes one to think more deeply about things. And as I prepared this service about God's lessons in the pandemic, I realized that actually we learn much more about God and from God when we have difficulties. When it's all going right, we don't learn as much. So there's something positive that we can say about great difficulties, that they bring us closer and to God and more knowledgeable about God. The COVID-19 pandemic is, of course, a disaster that we will not forget. It has been difficult for many people whose way of life has been threatened. We have suffered issues of mental health, both old and young, and the scars are with us. My secretary's daughter, Carol, was a newly qualified nurse at the start. And on her first night as a qualified nurse, it was a night shift. 5 people died. Many people have lost friends and family dear to them. And I cannot imagine how difficult it has all been for some. I have been very fortunate, as I live in the country. I walk in the village. I have good communications with my family and work happily using my computer from home. When I compare my experiences with a family on universal credit, with young children living in a flat on the nth floor, it does not bear thinking about. I look forward to getting back to a normal life, but there are some things that the pandemic has taught me. In some respects, it will, with all the difficulties, have taught us all some things that are important. Let's go back to the beginning. At the start, if you remember, the weather was wonderful. Bright sun and warm, not just for one day, but for day after day. As I walked, it reminded me that we inhabit a potentially wonderful world. The wildflowers were beginning to pop up day after day, different ones, and I began to, more than before, to see how lucky we are to be alive and well. I'd been to the opera just before lockdown, and it told me to care for our world, how lucky I was to be alive. I should stay around and not endanger others. The pandemic caused me to better appreciate the world. Before, with frenetic activity, I had not stopped to do so. We must continue to care for our world and look after it. I now see the same cycles coming round again, and the wildflowers are even more wonderful. I had the time to read a book, There Is No Planet B, by the brother of Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the internet. And they were brought up in a Unitarian family. And the book told us that we need to take care. We need to take climate change and our use of our planet seriously, or we are destined to extinction, a worse, much worse effect than the pandemic. Although not now a practicing Unitarian, I can see its effects within him and within us. It tells me we must all play our part to reduce our energy consumption. Without the pandemic, I would not have taken it so seriously and begun to take steps. So the pandemic has taught us to appreciate our world and take steps to secure its future. I was overweight at the start of the pandemic. Not quite obese, but my clothes had become tight and uncomfortable. Normally in a year, I would spend 500 hours a year driving in my car. And then it was reduced to almost nil. Just think of it, 10 hours a week, nearly 2 hours every day. So I decided to walk 10 miles a day instead, though that was twice the time. I also decided to watch what I ate and plan my food and reduce my calorie intake. I lost my excess weight and got to what I weighed when I married 57 years ago. I put books to the weight of my loss in a bag and I could hardly lift it. I cannot find the words to tell you how much better I feel. food is an addiction. And there are two things that helped me due to the pandemic. First, I think I had to think in advance. Secondly, my life had become stressed, rushing here and there. As a result, I got back into control, went to bed early, got up early, walked. Not only did I want to be well, but I felt that the pandemic had cheated me of one of the few years left, and perhaps I could gain a year back. A lesson of the pandemic that would help me in the future. Take it easier. Stop and stand and stare. You will remember that the first lockdown was really strict. The traffic disappeared and the air became crisp and clear, the sky blue. And it taught me that we really are endangering our planet. We should really try to do something about it to make the world a better place. So I began to think about my energy consumption. What also became clear is the communities at the lower end of the economic scale suffered more than those at the high end. I think the pandemic has caused us to appreciate the effect of economic and education disadvantage more. And I'm sure that this will have long-term results. The fact that the death rates have been highest among the disadvantaged has brought home to us all that something needs to be done. I can see as a result of the pandemic that there will be shifts in services to help the disadvantaged. It has made us more aware. I used to be part of a company that made suits. I have not worn a suit for 12 months. I wear casual clothes and rotate the same ones with very little variety. You have my taking service gear on today, right? On Zoom, you cannot see what shoes I'm wearing. Fashion becomes less important, and spending on material things and holidays, not something that we compare with one another. We become less materialistic. We spend more time on our homes and gardens and families. I think we have appreciated more what is important in life, but we have appreciated the importance of community by having missed it. I have noticed that when I ring people to find out how they are, we speak for a long time, and not just because we have the time. We miss the interaction. Zoom and telephone helps, as does other forms of technology. But on the few occasions when I have met people in person, I notice there is a magic in being with people that is not reproduced with technology. Something passes that has a reality that is not reproduced. Touching people by shaking hands extends it, shows that we should treasure our personal contact and keep communities, or we will lose something that is difficult to describe in words. We do not listen if we do not have time and listen. And when we are with people, we can listen better. Finally, the pandemic, by taking the excesses out of our lives, and has given us time and mental space, and has taught me, and I think a lot of people, to be more spiritual, to appreciate the great spirit of God within us all. I have understood the holiness of the prophet hermit, and it has caused me to think more spiritually. Be less diverted. Begin to work out what really matters in our lives and what is important. Have time to stop and stare, to appreciate others. have time to open ourselves to the great spirit of all recent and past souls, to refine our filter through prayer so that we can better distinguish what is positive and what is important and what is not and what is selfish. It also, as I have said, taught me something that I am not proud of. A neighbour in the retirement flats caught COVID and died, and the neighbour that went to help him caught it too, but luckily survived. I asked myself at the time if I would have gone to help my neighbour, and I'm not sure I would have. I am still too attached to the world and to the material and to the future. I have to admire those who worked in hospitals and care homes where they had COVID, those that had to get out and do the jobs that keep us all going, the teachers and bus drivers. I realize how unequal the world is, but perhaps the pandemic has brought us nearer to that understanding. The pandemic has been dreadful. Maybe it's not over, but at least it might have checked us and moved us to a world where we are more appreciative of each other, less reliant in things, be prepared to do with less, live a less stressed life and a more spiritual one. We still have a long way to go. Amen. We're now going to sing our fourth hymn. Thank you, Barry. Human kindness. We believe in human kindness, large amid the human race. Hymn 187.
We believe in human kindness, large amid the human race, turning from indifferent blindness to compassion's healing grace. We believe in self-denial, in the cause of greater joy, in the love that lives through trial, dying not through death's destroy. We believe in love renewing all that sin has swept away, leaven like its work pursuing, night by night and day by day. In its patience, its endurance, to forbear and to retrieve, in the large and full assurance of its triumph, we believe.
Benediction. As we leave this place, let us be determined to take steps to save our world from the crisis of global warming, so our children and their children will inherit a wonderful world. Let us be determined to sustain our communities and listen to our neighbours. Let us rely on ourselves and not material possessions. And let us give of ourselves unselfishly to help our neighbours. Can we extinguish our chalice now, Robert? Though we extinguish the light of the candle, our faith burns on, our vision remains bright, our fellowship warm, and our yearnings for peace, justice, and the life of the Spirit constant. So be it until we meet again.
Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go. Go now in peace, go now in peace. May the love of God surround you everywhere, everywhere you may go.